That's so hot. You subscribe to Pando? That's so hot. You subscribe to Pando? That's so hot.
Oops. I'm not sure. Alright. It should be working now. It all got a little hectic in the last second here. Guys, thanks for the subs and stuff. I had to quickly set this up, but it all worked
Give
out.
this man your money.
I don't have to adjust the camera while on stream this time. I'm getting better at this. Alrighty, guys. I'm not sure. I think most people are not as familiar with you anymore because you haven't been playing that actively. I would say the last, if I have to take a guess, the last 2 years maybe?
Yeah, I think it's
1
closer
year?
to 2.5.
2.5
Yeah,
even.
it's definitely at least 2.
But for those who still remember you, you used to stream like pretty similar, maybe not the similar content wise, but you did also like podcast things, maybe not as much, but you did interviews and stuff. And I remember actually, I think it was the first one to ever reach out to me to ask, hey, want to come on? And you know what? I have to say, I'm not I'm not ashamed to admit. At the time, I was a little nervous about it, right? Because like hostility between the groups in the game and all that stuff, they're very real at times, right? So I was thinking like, am I putting myself out there? Because like obviously when you have C, like, you know, it's usually the other side is talking shit about you, which is normal. But do you want to, you know, draw it in? Like, do you want to get people to talk more shit even and all that stuff? So I remember being a little nervous, but turns out everyone was alright. And especially, I mean, the community on Twitch, I think everyone, not everyone, but 90% are positive, like no matter what you do. So, yeah, thanks for the invite.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think you'll get people who will go to Twitch streams occasionally to just like make a mess, but the people who are consistent Twitch fans, they're kind of like you and I, you just like good content, whether it's in game or out of game.
Yeah, and I mean, we at the time were also fairly close stage together, right? So you guys were like staged in Fade, and I was still in it, and also like already in it, and then in Fountain already. So like it was like we didn't know what we had at the time. That's sometimes when I look back at these situations, like look at this. You guys were right there. It was like 10 jumps. You know, like literally, I think several times a week we took like 5 gate jumps and 1 Titan bridge, and we were in your main Care Bear pocket. Like literally. It was like, and at the time, we didn't understand what we had until you guys decided to leave, right? Then everyone was like, shit, what are we doing now? Like there's like content heaven for us to just go there. Even if we like feed you guys, nobody felt bad about losing a couple ships to Horde and stuff, right? So, you know, I think both sides profited a lot there. And I kind of miss those times.
I mean, God bless anyone who tried to live in Cloud Ring during that time.
Mm-hmm. I mean, there was the French Keepster, obviously, right? The 49, not 49 dash,
9 Tech 4.
9 Tech 4, which was interesting, right? That we left
Yeah.
when you guys wanted to leave and all that stuff. Yeah, it was quite an interesting kind of conflict. Um, but yeah, so what have you been up to then? Like 2.5 years, and why would you come back now? Right? Is it the war?
Well, no, I mean, so what I've been up to is kind of why I came back. So the last few months that I streamed, I basically was like, I'm gonna, grind really hard and see if I can make this a livable wage. And it turns out no. You have to, I mean, the grind on Twitch, anyone who's done it to try to like actually make it their income is just really difficult. So I basically went back to a full-time job and I went to college at the same time. So I finished a 4-year degree in 2 years and have like a really nice job now, which obviously took all of my time. I actually came back. Um, I came back maybe 2 weeks before Goons and Test called it. So people see me and they're like, "Hey, you came back for the war, huh?" And I'm like, "Well, more like the war came back for me, if you know what I'm saying."
Well, that's nice to hear. Like, congratulations to your degree and the job and all that stuff. Like, I know what it takes. Like, I know how hard it is. Obviously, I'm streaming too. Like, I know it's not like what people might think. You just turn on the stream and do what you do usually, and you just get paid now, right? Like, that's not the reality of things, right?
Yeah, no.
No, and
Especially what I was doing, it took so much off-stream prep. Um, just keeping tabs on, like I was probably broadcasting between 20 and 10% of the Eve I was observing because so much of it was not stream worthy, but I needed to be watching to catch the stuff that was. And having all the characters in the right places before things started to happen because as you know, something can pop off and it's over in 20 minutes. So if you
yeah,
don't have the character in the right spot, like you're just not going to stream it. And sometimes I'm like up for 16 to 20 hours and then I'm about to go to bed and then AUTZ decides to do something that lasts 6 more hours. So it was difficult. And definitely, and especially I don't know how it is in other places, but in the US, the amount of money that someone can like calculate that you make if you're just making it as a contractor, which is what you are on Twitch. Like there's no health insurance, there's no anything else, and all of that money is before taxes, which self-employment taxes are pretty decent. So yeah, it was not tenable. It was certainly fun. I enjoyed every minute of it.
yeah. For those who like wonder, like the main thing you did was like fight coverage, and like you said, like I think that is even more than like a normal FC would have to put in like work wise, right? Because like as one FC, you would pay attention to your guys and pay attention to the guys you're fighting directly, right? And there's a certain time zone where it overlaps. You don't have to have that full picture of all of Eve. I mean, most of the time. Right now, maybe more than usually, but in general, it's limited at least, right? But if you want to cover all of Eve, you want to have all the good fights, you have to have all that. You have to have, first of all, you have to have the experience to know what has potential to kick off. Then you have to have contacts most of the time, I'm guessing, right? That people contacted you and gave you the intel and said, okay, there's a high
Yeah,
chance, right?
that was hard for me. I had a benefit and a sort of deficit in that because as a horde director, FC, etc., horde stuff that we were involved in, I already knew where it was, and if we were going to do anything special, I had a heads up on it. But because I was well known as a horde director, it was hard to get a lot of other people to talk to me. A few people would because they basically took a risk and said, "Hey, this is when this is happening. Obviously, please no leaks, etc." and then I didn't leak, so they would continue afterwards. But most of the groups they were just like, nah. And especially, I mean, I don't blame them looking back at all of Eve's history, like so many of the like CSM and stuff like that is supposed to be explicitly neutral.
Yeah, but at the
It just
time,
ends up.
Pando?
but I think
That's
at the
so
time, Horde
hot.
was probably. Sorry, I have to mute the thingy sounds. At the time, I think Horde was probably the best group to be in for something like that, because people didn't take Horde that serious at the time. Now it's kind of changed, right? Horde is a massive group. They're probably the strongest group in PanFam and so on. So now that would be a different thing. But back then, people were not too worried, but still it was probably hard to get a hold of like good
Well,
intel from outside.
people like people assumed that if you were Horde leadership, that made you PL, which is very. I mean, like, I guess because Horde was started by PL folks, so like at the beginning they were, explicitly PL folks that were leading Horde, but and there was a lot of the leadership in Horde would like step up to PL line membership after being a leader in Horde, which never appealed to me. So sometimes people would, I mean, like GigX, for instance, I fought him a few times and PL came in and he's like, I know you prepared them. Like, I guess some people just thought we were sleeper agents.
That's how GigX works, though.
Yeah,
I remember I showed up in CO2 staging once, and I forgot what exactly happened, but I think we killed like a few Omen navies, right? He flew Omen navies at the time, and we killed a few, and then he reformed and brought like, I don't even know, a shit ton of people, right? And we were in Snatch, if you remember Snatch.
Oh yeah.
And then we left, right? Like, can't fight this too much, right? And then he's like, Panda, you will never change. I didn't even know the guy, you know? It's like, you will never change, right? He instantly had like some grudge going. I mean, he's a character, that dude, right? And yeah, I mean, we talked about GigX on this podcast more than once, right? Everyone has like a little bit of an opinion on the whole situation. But yeah.
Yeah, GigX good for the game. I'm not sure good for a lot of the people he interacted with, from what I heard.
Yeah.
But I don't know. He just, like, I don't know. I think in Eve rewards intense personalities with content a lot of the time. But there's always fallout for intense personalities and those they interact with.
Yeah. I mean, we also don't know the whole story, I believe. Right? I think CCP is not the type. I mean, obviously, I know that very, very well. To go out and tell the story, why someone got banned and all that stuff. There's no real details. I think there's a little bit more to it than like most people are aware. Right? It's not just that one thing. I think he did some shit before, but
yeah, probably.
Yeah, but hey, so what have you been missing? What do you like? What did you hear from the outside that you
I didn't
missed
really
out on?
hear. I mean, I know I kept an eye on. I stayed subscribed to the Reddit, so for timing, I left right around when the Abyssal stuff was coming out. So Abyssal mods, I know about. I know that they exist and kind of how they work, but somebody said, "Oh, you should get an Abyssal this or that thing," and I'm like, I don't even know how to buy those. And
Let me
apparently,
tell
there's
you
like
about the
some
Kiki, my friends.
website. And then yeah, I saw the like Sino changes, the Triglavian stuff, and some of the other interceptors, combat interceptors not being nullified, and then the rise of the hacks. But as far as details, I didn't pay super close attention, but I'm I'm slowly picking it up. I'm still occasionally seeing. I saw like the Triglavian armor ship, the like Zarmzaz or whatever it is, and
Zarmast.
had no idea what it was. I was like, with that kind of name, it's Triglavian, but I don't know what it does, so I'm not sure what to do here.
Yeah, and then obviously also the Kiki, right?
Yeah. Tell me about your friend the Kikimori.
No, I'm just kidding. I mean, I could go like and praise the Kiki for an hour. Don't get me wrong. Uh, but yeah, I think so. When you stop playing, like what did you miss? Like Eve politics or Eve story wise? Then.
I mean, for me, it's always about fleet fight gameplay. Like the lore doesn't matter to me at all. The politics, they're fun to engage in sometimes, but like, I, yeah, it's not really. I don't really get dragged into it. I like the combat puzzle that is presented to you on a grid, and then as the puzzle changes, you need to keep solving it in different ways, and however quickly and however best you can solve it, decides some of the time. Sometimes it's who has more puzzle pieces, but
And so I remember when we first talked, I'm not sure if it was like right at the beginning, but we talked about like potential changes and problems in the game and all that stuff a lot. I mean, I talked with like a lot of FCs that's what happens, right? When you talk to another FC, like everyone
yeah.
kind of steers and then, throws around ideas and stuff. And I remember us talking about some stuff. So in those 2.5 years, did CCP actually make some changes that you really like something that you thought they should have been doing earlier?
I mean, changing combat scepters to not be nullified is a welcome change. I personally think that they should separate combat and nullification completely. Like, I don't like nullified things that can fight. That's just. I understand there's certain gameplay that would mess with. I personally don't care about the gameplay, so that's just my opinion. Um, I think the biggest things that still need to be addressed in Eve are things that are tedium, that are not. They're just not worth. They're not useful. Like, tedium shouldn't be a cost, I don't think, in a game. Like, micromanaging and investing skill points and ISK into like automation and things like that. Like being able to do more buy orders, more manufacturing slots, stuff like that makes sense. But like the Sino changes, for instance, I understand the point of them, but it made a bunch of gameplay that didn't seem to be the target of the change a whole lot more tedious, which just doesn't make sense to me.
I think the Sino changes were one of the better ones, to be quite honest. I think we really needed that. I mean, how long? So you've been back for
Like
almost 2 months,
yeah, month and a half, something
something
like
like this.
that.
So
Yeah,
how
I mean, the
much?
combat Sino changes I think are great, but the fact that they obviously didn't even think about the industrial Sino stuff, and then their solution for it, it's just like moving industrial Sinos around is a huge pain in the ass, and I don't really care that much, but it just adds a bunch of tedium to a bunch of players for no reason. Uh, like, that's the kind of stuff, like the attribute system. I still think needs something like that remaps everything is really really annoying. I'm not sure that any player that hasn't played Eve before would be like, "Ooh, I like that system." I think a lot of us have Stockholm syndrome about it.
Yeah, that's true. I think the attribute system, it kind of feels like it's complexity for complexity's sake, right? It's like to make it more complex, but there's no real, sense behind
Yeah,
it.
I think the mechanics of it are a vestige of, I mean, because back in the day you trained learning skills to increase your attributes.
Yeah.
So I think that it exists mechanically, the way that it exists is a vestige of that, in what you're saying of like complexity for complexity's sake, because a lot of games had that garbage back then. But I think the reason that they still work the way that they do is because I think they've admitted as much, that the LP market is like heavily pinned by attribute implants, or held up by it.
Hmm.
So they've got these systems that interact with each other, and it all kind of like organically developed into this one blob that has all these pieces that are connected. Um,
Yeah, I
and if
guess
you
that makes
just
sense.
say, "Oh, no more remaps," then you're going to have people who are complaining, "Well, I used to be able to train this fast, and now that you've taken remaps, I can only train this fast." And yeah, so like I get it, but I think at some point you have to rip the Band-Aid off because it's really annoying.
But I mean, so if that's the point with the attributes, I can see the problem, and then I have to go back and say it's not that big of the issue after all. You know what I mean?
No, of course
like,
not.
there's
Of
other
course
things to fix then. So, like, if it was easily done with just removing the whole attribute thing, all right, let's do it. But that's gonna come with a host of problems, I guess. Yeah, it's an old system.
I think that the thing with Eve in particular, to me, that I feel like CCP really has to consider, and it historically hasn't, is what is the way for someone to optimize this system, and what does that look like? Because there are Eve players in particular are going to optimize the system, and it's the reason they took learning skills out, because optimizing the system of learning skills means you don't get to play for like 3 months. Remaps, if you're like being really optimal and you're a new player, having to train skills within your remap like limits your gameplay if you're trying to optimize your SP. And I don't know. I'm not sure that I like that incentive being there, because that's, I think, what gets people to quit the game. I mean, the first time I quit, it was because I trained learning skills for 2 months and got bored.
I've never remapped ever. Never,
Yeah, I set
not
to a
once.
balanced remap like 2-3 years ago and just forgot about it.
I mean, some people might not know, but there are some characters with a certain whatever you call it, like race, tribe, and all that stuff mixed, right? That have 2 points more than the maximum. Actually, my character is one of those. So you do have 2 points extra. So when I would, like, if I would remap right now, I would have 2 points in total less, because it's already set on -2, right?
Right. Yeah.
Of -2 available to remap. So in that case, exactly, Kaldari, Achura, whatever, right? So if I would remap, I'm not paying attention to the skills anyway, right? So wouldn't make sense.
Well, once you get to a certain point where you feel like you can fly pretty much everything you want to.
Yeah, that anyway, right? So it's I kind of feel like that was one of the things that people talked about before, is should you ever have the ability in Eve actually to fly everything, or should you always have to specialize? I'm not sure what would be, I'm not sure if it wouldn't be beneficial for the game experience if everyone had to kind of choose a path, because I mean that's kind of what they're pushing people to anyway, right? So they're saying like choose who you want to be, kind of, what do you want to be? You want to be a bounty hunter, which is obviously, I mean, what the fuck, right? Or like a miner, or like you want to be a politician or whatever, right? So they kind of want people to specialize, but then skill wise, like you can actually be everything at once, right? So
yeah, I mean, I think some of that is solved with ISK investment that needs to happen for you to be certain types of, like if you want to be the manufacturing god, then like you have to sink ISK into that kind of stuff. And I think a lot of that, like, people are gonna LARP like whatever they want to be. So I'm not sure it really matters with the skills. At least I don't think so.
Oh, you know what another idea was, which I really like, and I mean it's kind of my idea, so of course I like it.
Well, of course, yeah.
What if there was a wormhole going up, and it goes like, it's the Eve gate, but it doesn't go just back, but it leads to new space, but it's basically a restart. But now the take, like, you don't want people to leave this universe and start a new one, right? So the idea is that it's temporary, right? Let's say there's a wormhole going up, it leads into a new region, and everyone starts with 0 basically, but it only holds up for half a year. After half a year, you can maybe jump out with 1 ship or so, maybe your cargo full of shit, whatever. You can try to bring it over, right? Can't be that much, because you start with 0 and half a year. How far can you get, right? But the thing is, it's an even playing ground. It would be an entry for all kinds of new players, right? They want to start the game, and then, at this date, the fucking Eve gate opens, and you have like this unique, like, complete new player experience again, right? Everyone is a new player technically. Some have knowledge.
You're describing seasons, basically.
Yes. I mean, kind of, right? And then you would have, like, if you look at it then, you have a half a year to get somewhere, but you would specialize. You wouldn't just skill everything. You can't, right? Like, what are you going to do? You're probably not even going to reach a capital. Maybe you bring an alt in that specializes in that or whatever, right? Some people will go hardcore right away, I'm guessing. But at the same time, everyone starts even, everyone. So I would kind of like to see an experiment like that.
Oh, I mean, I fully agree. It will just literally not happen for monetary reasons. Like, because you can't sell skill injectors and plex and stuff inside a temporary space. I mean, you can, and certain people will buy it, but not nearly at the rate as they do outside.
But the thing is, though, those characters, like, let's say it is a draw for new players. If you have more players playing, after half a year, they're back on the other server where you can actually buy and sell skill injectors, whatever, right? And so technically,
yeah, I mean, I agree, but I think what you're going to run into is a lot of people that just don't participate in the permanent cycle. I mean, I wouldn't. I just play the seasons. Like, I don't know how big is the Diablo non-season community. Like, is there a lot of people that play Diablo 3 like regular mode without seasonal stuff?
I don't know, but I mean, to compare Diablo with Eve, I think that's a little bit unfair too. I mean, Diablo is completely casual, right? I mean,
yeah, no, I feel you. I'm just saying, like, that would be awesome for me. I think the closest we'd probably end up getting is having players create some kind of like war games type situation where a bunch of power is large enough to somewhat enforce it, declare a region as like T1 Cruiser region or something for a month. But I'm not sure you could sell it to CCP to do that. Not to mention you're also asking them to use development energy and time to do so. Although maybe
it
you
shouldn't be
charge
that
for
much.
it. Maybe you just charge a one-time fee for it every time they open the sort of temp universe. Just make everyone pay like $40 to get in.
I mean, I don't know. I don't know if I would pay $40 for it.
I'm like, oh, it's a great idea. Someone else can do it though.
But for free, please, guys. Come on. But I don't know. It's just like, I think CCP is a little bit more open to experimentation now. I mean, that's one thing you missed out completely is Blackout, right? Oh wait.
Yeah, I mean, I watched the tiers. I mean, that's if I was gonna come back and actually play during any of the time when I was doing school stuff, it would have been then, because it seemed like exactly my jam. But have they done more experimentation other than that? I mean, I know they're adding weird
Space
stuff.
weather. Space weather's coming.
Yeah,
It's a little controversial. I don't hate it.
The space weather is fine. I think it's cool. I think that hopefully there will be groups that follow the weather and like become like
the weather
like Reavers in the storm or whatever, but I think they said there are going to be 8 for the entire galaxy, so the chances that one is actually going to run over you and you're not seeking it out is
moves
pretty low.
I mean,
well, yeah, I know it
one
moves, but
system
still,
a day.
Still, like, how many systems are there in Eve?
Yeah, I mean 2,000 something, right? But how many are
every day you
nullsec?
have
It only
8 out of whatever chance.
Yeah, I mean, technically you can predict when the storm cloud gets into a certain area where you think, okay, that's where we can get content. So I can totally see groups. Let's say a medium-sized group that is like fairly tight-knit, like a Snuffed Out or like
Is
Volta. Yeah, Volta was a name that came up in my mind right away too. Like maybe these guys keep eyes on those and they're like, oh, it's in this area now.
Mm-hmm.
Let's grab this and this doctrine. I made this for this like weirdo storm, right? And let's kill some stuff. And then they start reffing structures in your stuff under the storm, and then you have to defend it.
Do the storms move how often? Do we know?
I think one system a day.
Because that means that basically you'll never be able to actually destroy a structure under the storm unless you ref it before the storm gets there.
I mean, that's not necessarily true because I think the storm center is it 2 systems?
Oh yeah,
or is it one
right,
system? Right. And then you have the outskirts of the storm, which is I think it's a diameter of like 7 systems total that you would have to cross to get through. That's technically like a week, right? So if it moves through, it's a week on each system.
Could do it.
And yeah, I mean, we will see. I mean, hopefully there's some people, like some crafty people coming up with some cool shit. Right? I mean, it might just open some.
The question I have is, I wonder how you would assume that the values for things are just changed when you're in the system. But my concern is that the values for the changes the storm creates are going to be additional calculations. So tie-dye is going to be even worse in those systems. Like, I don't know how have people compared. I mean, I guess it's hard to like to figure out in a wormhole whether one or the other is happening, because when there's a humongous wormhole fight, it's like pretty obvious, and the node, I'm sure, gets reinforced.
I don't think so. What I'm thinking how it works is you jump into system and then your ship gets, instanced basically, right? So like this is your resist, this is like what you have, It's including the storm. I don't think that extra little bit is going to make that big difference in the fight itself. The calculation is already done. So if that wasn't the case, I think yes, you would be right. That would be crazy. Like every time you get shot.
Maybe I'm just pessimistic about
the
tie-dye, and the way that it can actually interact with mechanics is probably my least favorite thing about Eve right now. Like, it's really frustrating. Like, it would be one thing if tie-dye was just regular ass Eve but slowed way down, but the problem is that when the tie-dye gets deep enough, the mechanics actually start to break. I don't know. I don't know what the solution is. Obviously, if it was more money and they had it, they would just do it. So I'm not sure. I just complain, I guess.
I don't think it's necessarily a money thing. I think it's just, I mean, you don't see any other game doing it. There's no other game with 2,000 people, no matter what. Like, probably a 2,000 people chess match would probably struggle too, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, I think server, like, from a technical side, I think they are quite far with what they can do, right? There's stuff coming though with like the Hadian guys. I'm not sure if you're aware of that. So there's it's cloud computing based, basically, right? So all the calculations the server is doing, like, basically is put on the client, right? So the clients would calculate that and stuff. So I'm not entirely sure, like, don't ask me about the exact tech, but they did some test runs and stuff like this, but I don't think that's going to be ready for Eve anytime soon. It's going to be like in 5 years time or so. But yeah, I think
it's
people,
an interesting way to think about it. That does increase the complexity of basically your IO for your server, right? So you have to have multiple instances of each calculation, so that in case somebody loses their connection, you don't lose that calculation. You also have to make sure that the calculations that are being done on each person's client are not the ones that are being sent from the client, right? So yeah, it's interesting. I'm not sure. The problem with that stuff is that like distributed computing for real-time stuff is depending on, like, you have such a variance of player hardware and connection speed and connection consistency that I'm not sure. It would be interesting, but I'm not sure how well it would work long term.
well, I mean, they seem quite confident. Like,
well, most tech startups do seem quite confident.
yeah. The thing is, I mean, yeah, you're right. But so
Look,
there
man,
was.
I work all day, and single Azure servers sometimes decide to just die for no reason. So forgive me for not trusting in cloud computing quite as much.
But like, let's just assume. Let's just, like, I hope it works. Obviously, right? Let's just say, like, in 5 years, Hadian comes out and says, "Okay, we're ready. Here you go. There's the tech CCP, and they implemented. Everything works perfectly. No tie-dye ever again." So what would change, right? What would change, honestly? I think a lot. I think most people in Fleet and so they don't have an idea how much influence tide actually has.
Hmm.
But I think like as FCs, we see that every day. Like it's part of the equation you have to solve most of the time.
Hmm. I mean, you would. I don't. Maybe it would be the final rise of the Zoomer, right? If being able to, if you're talking like 4,000 person fights with no tie dye, the reaction times start to really matter. Because right now it's like, okay, if there are enough people on the field where you're easily alphaing each other instantly, usually there's enough tie dye to call targets at a reasonable rate and think about things before you make decisions. So yeah, I don't know. Maybe
Yeah.
old men like me are not going to be so successful if that ever happens.
You know what's one thing that would profit from it? The first time I saw you, no, actually it was the second time I saw you local. I did a bush bomb run just for fun, right?
Oh
I had
yeah,
like
I
one
saw
command
that.
destroyer, cloak up, like 100 km. Had bombers warp to me, bombed me, and then like I tried to time it, which I boosted a couple bombs. It wasn't perfect, but the bombs landed where they're supposed to land and all that stuff. And then you said in local, this technique, it's a forbidden technique. Like it was forbidden by the grandmasters. It's like
I mean, when the boosters were first announced, that was like
everyone was thinking about it.
maybe the second thing that I thought of. I'm like, you could launch bombs and then boost them onto people,
Yeah,
and then
yeah.
immediately I was like, you could never actually pull that. No, you could never actually no. And I threw it in my like, don't even bother thinking about it.
Yeah, you know what? Like quickly after like the boosters came into the game, and I instantly jumped onto that. Obviously, right? Like I love bushing and stuff. And then every day people were like comboing me and saying, "Hey, did you know you can bush bombs?" And every time I would say, "Dude, I get it. And in theory, it's all great." But try to set it up properly. Try to make that run happen. Try to have the right situation at the right time. You have to have the pings, but like there's so many things that have to be on point.
And it's a style. It's just a style move, Like that
No,
much energy
actually,
and effort goes into it. Like you could probably achieve the same thing in a different way.
that's the thing. So hear me out. So there's a difference.
All right.
So there's a reason why I tried it, right? And there's a reason why I went so far and said, okay, we need to learn this technique actually. And the reason is, if you look at Munins, for example, lane up, MWDs on, they're fine. You cannot bomb them. They're too fast. You might land a bomb run if you're like perfect position with foresight, you're aligned to the right thing, but that's even more of a stretch, right? So it's very hard to catch Munins with a bomb run. Unless, they make a massive mistake. They're sitting still, they're doing some bullshit, right? Or they land in a bubble.
Sits on a ping for like 15, 20 seconds.
Yeah, don't get me wrong. I've bombed a bunch of Munins before, so they have to make a massive mistake, though, right? Now, with the normal bomb run, you would always land behind them. You would never hit them, right? They're always too fast. With a boosh bomb run, however, it's one guy who has to have the skill to boosh slightly in front of him. If you bomb this guy,
don't you need multiple squads? So you need multiple guys.
That's the thing. Now you do. Like before the patch, I'm not sure if you're aware, but bombs got nerfed a little bit, right? Before the patch, you could just wipe them out with one bomb run. But still, I think it would be very helpful if you land a full squad of bombs, 6-7 bombs on them. They cannot react in time. They cannot ADC in time because they're probably in a messy fight. You're not going to pay attention to some bombs that are flying around 100 km from you, right? There's some bombs at 100, and you don't even they're bombing into nowhere, basically, right? Because the command destroyer only decloaks right before he enters, and then you have 5 seconds time to realize, and then maybe you have 7 to maybe 10 seconds where you could react if you realize, right? But you're going to realize too late, I believe. Right? So you're going to have 3 to 4 seconds to hit that ADC. Without tie-dye.
You are being so generous. Most people, 95% of people are not going to ever know what happened to them.
Yeah, exactly. In most cases, I don't think they're going to ADC. I don't think they will.
No.
Because in a messy fight, you're not paying attention.
Well, the FC would have to notice and call it in time, and they'd have to just trust that command while not being shot at. It would probably not. I mean, most of the time, I think literally everyone in that fleet, including the FC, is going to be like, what just happened? I took a bunch of damage. I don't know why.
And then think about it. If you land a solid squad of bombs, they're gonna be low shields, if not in armor, right?
Yeah, and a shitload of them are going to hit their ADC. Just
And then
that's
they
it.
hit their ADC, then it's too late. And then they're low hit points with an ADC on cooldown. That's definitely an advantage. And you can all do this with like 10 dudes in your fleet, right? You're gonna sacrifice a
All
command
right.
destroyer most
You've
likely.
convinced me. Let's do it.
But yeah, I'm trying. I will do this. I just didn't have like, so the fights that we're having right now, everyone's like super careful, right? You guys in Fountain, you know, we're not in position to contest those numbers right now in Fountain. So if we jump over to Fountain, like it's gonna be like whatever, right? Same goes for the other front in Period Bases and Paragon Soul, right? Test wants to fight on one side, we want to fight on the other side, and it's like always a little bit big back and forth. So you never get the chance to really set stuff up, I feel like. But I believe that's probably going to change very soon. And then we're going to see a little bit more reliable brawly fights. But yeah, I'll try to land the forbidden technique, that's for sure. And, you know, I'm not too worried about giving it away. Like, you know, I think
Yeah, I mean, it's just hard to it's hard to do, and it's not just one person who has to get good.
And I mean, technically it is, right? Technically, there's one.
Well, the bombers have to aim properly,
no,
right?
So I mean, I don't want to. Maybe I shouldn't give everything away, but technically, so what you gonna do? So for everyone who wants to learn the forbidden technique, here's how I think it should be done, right? So first, you need to have a couple of bookmarks at least on that grid, right? Which is the hard part. You need to predict where the fight is going to take place.
Oh yeah, well okay, that's cheating. You can't.
Well, no. So
first, you need to be Nostradamus.
No.
Accurately predict the future, like Minority Report style.
So you can be very fast and flexible with it too, I think. Right, but it helps certainly to know, okay, this is most likely where it's going to take place. So you have a spot. Like, it doesn't matter if it's the perfect spot where you're going to be, it's exactly 100k from whatever, but have some people that give you some options to warp around, right? So you can warp your command destroyer in a spot with a good chance of getting in a good bomb position. It's not that hard to predict, I think. Right? So it's possible. Be it a gate, be it a fucking citadel, whatever. So you warp that dicta in, you cloak it up on light grids, and you have the bombers on a ping. And when that's on the dicta, sorry, the command destroyer, right? So you cloak the command destroyer. And when that command destroyer, and you can have several of those, right? You can have like 10 of these. As soon as one of them says, okay, I'm in a good spot, bomb me.
Okay.
You warp the bombers down at 25 because, you know, you want to bomb a little bit over the thing. So the window for the bush is a little bit bigger. You bomb at 25. And you make sure everyone just bombs. Because you're cloaked, people will be confused, right? They're bombing into nowhere, basically, because they don't see you, right? And then when the bombs are at, I think what I said was 13 km, when the damage bombs are at 13 km, that's where you decloak and boosh, right? So the timing should work out. They should be right on you. You should be booshing them forward, and then all that. So that's the math part, right?
That
the reality.
Seems like a lot of preparation.
I don't think it's that much preparation. That's the thing, right? That's what I always said. It is like, is it worth the work? And I think till now I thought it probably isn't, but I believe I changed my mind a little bit. So I'm giving it a shot, and like hopefully it works.
Well, you know, if it starts working, that they're just gonna nerf. They're gonna say bombs can't get boosted anymore.
Oh my god, stop it.
What? It's not my fault. You got boosters nerfed.
You know, that's still one of the, like, just today in Fleet, someone had to bring it up again, like, hey, remember those days where we could just boost everyone? It's like, yeah, I do remember those days. And then also the days where, like, there was raw cards everywhere, right? You jump into a constellation and there's like 4 systems with 10 raw cards each. You don't see that anymore.
That's the biggest, I think, thing that I've come back to is the Oracle nerfs and the super nerfs. It's like that's sort of changing. I mean, I'm not sure. I guess I don't know enough about the situation to be sure, but it seems like a pretty decent buff for Horde overall because of where we are at in our sort of overall arc of development, where we have like just a lot of capital, not super capital, just regular capital pilots.
Yeah, I guess, yeah. Yeah, you're right.
I mean, I think, given a few more years, it'd be a different story. But I think like the curve of people progressing from subcaps into caps into supers, the fact that now, there were nerfs that essentially said, well, supers are not only not that good anymore compared to how they used to be, but now it's also harder to make them. Yeah, I think so. I do. I mean, anyone who knows me, if I say I used to mine in a Rorqual, they should know how good Rorquals used to be. It's like it's probably the only PvE thing I've ever done.
It was
And because
insane.
like when people dropped you, it was like, all right, sweet. Now you get to essentially play like a fax tank mini game where people are trying to kill you, and you get to micromanage all your stuff like you're a fax in a wormhole or something.
And back then, the tank on those rockets was
Dude,
insane.
it was crazy.
Yeah,
I tanked like you could tank many dreads in a single Rorqual,
yeah,
not bling fit.
yeah. It was crazy. And then double ASB, triple ASB, like all kinds of weird shit, right? And we would be there with like 200 people in bombers, and everyone is focus voiding, and the rocket would just be like, "Well, I'm injecting dudes." Like,
Yep.
like fuck, you're done out of ammo sometimes. It was insane, yeah. But then you remember that one fight?
Yeah.
You guys, you remember that one, right?
Have you seen the name of our new staging citadel?
No. What is it?
It's called Never Forgetty the Spaghetti. And the spaghetti is that fight.
All right. You know what? I think you went AFK, and then afterwards, I had a whelp that was multiple times bigger than yours, right? So you don't have to, you have to worry. I lost like how many titans? I think 2 titans, 2 faction supers, like a revenant, a vendetta. I don't know. We killed a bunch of dreads for it. I mean, it was fun, you know.
Yeah, we didn't kill like any. I basically gave up. I didn't die in that fight, by the way. I caught a god bounce and survived. But yeah, it was
that was a nasty
I
fight.
watched a video of it, and I was like, it felt like watching something very cute, because I remember feeling at the time that, oh no, I've lost our entire cap fleet. Like I wasn't depressed or anything because I knew that we had prepared for it. Like Gobbins basically said, if you need to whelp the cap fleet to get content, don't be afraid. Don't not jump in because you're afraid that we won't have a cap fleet and that will affect our safety as a coalition or whatever. But I remember feeling like I just whelped almost all of our caps. And looking back at the video, it's like 30 carriers.
It's not that big of a deal, really.
No, I mean it kind of was at the time.
At the time, it was.
But just for me to feel that way, and then to see where we're at now, we're like, oh, overflow cap fleet is up. Like, oh,
Yeah.
okay.
And so for those, like, I'm not sure if I can recall everything, like every detail about it, but back then you were staging Fade, we were staging Fountain, and then it was exactly the situation we talked about earlier, right? All we had to do was 5 jumps and a Titan bridge, and boom, we were right there, and you guys were rock on mining.
Oh
and
yeah.
then
Well, I
back
mean,
then,
we had eyes, but it was like you could if we didn't have. I mean, our espionage stuff wasn't nearly as good, so a lot of the times it was we see you on dock and tell people to stop their whatever, the industrial core cycles or whatever, but sometimes just didn't happen in time because you could be there in 10 minutes.
yeah, and then but so we were also working together with Snuff a lot at the time, right? So
Mhm.
Snuff got the initial tackle. That was like one of our ways to always do it to people, right? Snuff is not the biggest group. They're scary, right? But usually people know, like, so if they do shit, they usually stay in the low sick area with like dreads and all that stuff. They rarely get to null sec unless it's like really like some big fish, right? And so a lot of times Snuff would show up with like subcaps only and then leave again and stuff like this. But then Snuff tackles you guys. Then we come in with, I forgot what ships we even brought. I think we came in actually with Macarials.
Well, somebody came in T3s, but I think that was Snuff. That was because
Yeah.
they bridged in. They were doing back when Nully Lokis, I think, or Nully Tengus, or not Nully, but covert, where they would use a covert bridge, but the ships were still really good in a fight because T3s used to be really good.
Yeah. Yeah, I forgot what
And then, I
exactly.
think we came in max after that.
And we got super lucky, which like you don't see in any of the videos, but like so the dude that lit the Sino for us, we didn't know. Right? Some dude had a sign for us. We didn't know who it was. That dude wouldn't, like, these kind of signers. You talk like you're trying to find out, like, are you right next to the carriers? And he's just giving you some weird info. He's like, yeah, there's 2 rockers here, or like that dude was completely confusing.
Goes, sign us up.
Yeah, and that dude was completely confusing, and Bliss was sitting there thinking, like, what am I gonna do now? Like, I don't have eyes on grid. There's a dude with the Sino. He talks like weird shit. And like,
so we had the same situations, except you got lucky and I got unlucky because I didn't have eyes on grid, and a guy told me a thing. Because I mean, the reason that I went in was because someone said that not even just someone, like, it wasn't just a voice in the comms, but someone who ostensibly had eyes on grid said that that a bunch of dreads had just come in on top of the Rorquals, and because we had put, I think, 2 or 3 faxes in on top of the Rorquals that were tackled, and then they said, "Oh, the dreads are in on top of the Rorquals," and so I was like, "All right, light our carrier Sino at range," and it turns out that it was like 3 or 4 dreads that came in, that's not the dreads I was looking for.
Right, yeah.
So then as soon as I came in, loaded grid saw there were 3 or 4 dreads, and I was like,
"Where's the rest?
We are dead now."
Yeah,
and the dude, we die.
And the dude that wouldn't answer the question, like a simple question, like, how far are you from those carriers? Because you jumped in at range and you aligned out with the carriers, and we kept asking, like, how far are you from those carriers? And he would just, like, say weird shit. And then Bliss just goes like, okay, light it, let's jump in. Right? And we just fucking lit it and jumped in and hoped for the best. And we were right next to the carriers, luckily. And then, it was a solid good fight. But, yeah. Maybe we shouldn't talk about it all that much. But like I said, I whelped a shit ton of stuff. Not too long after. It should have been like probably around that time too. Maybe a month or 2 later, I whelped a bunch of shit. I think everyone does that at some point. Right?
Who were you fighting?
So in that case, it was a weird situation. That was the biggest web. Actually, there's an article on a German MMO site about it actually. Because, like, yeah, but so it was an Aspel in Syndicate, just a random Aspel. Someone refed it. One of our SCs is like, oh yeah, let's poke a file, which is nice, right? Like, yeah, go ahead and do it. Right? So he goes, refs it, and on the timer, he comes back and he has like fairly small, I think it was Ishtars we were flying at the time, a fairly small Ishtar fleet. And he gets engaged by other subs. And I have to say, I got a little bit mad in the middle of it because it was completely unnecessary how we lost these ships. We lost these Ishtars slowly, and I was like, dude, Logis didn't anchor properly. There was so many mistakes, right? And I got a little mad. So I saw where this was going, so I pinged everything, right? Because I didn't want these guys to get that Aspel saved, right? So I pinged everything we had, but it's in Syndicate. So we have to take this massive region gate. We have to get into a mid. We have to then get the Sino in the right spot and all that stuff, right? And then everything is mitted and stuff. Our Ishtar fleet was kind of intact still. So I felt like, okay, if we bring in supers now, they have to bail. Which is also what happened, right? For like a minute. So so we bring in, like, I just go on comms, okay, everything jumps. And at the time, we didn't have a shield super fleet. We didn't have, like, when I call for supers, I expect armor supers and titans, right? So what does Brisk do? Jumps his fucking shield rag in. Then another guy's like, oh, shield rag jumps? I'm gonna jump my fucking toy space turret in. Like, what's it called? Revenant, right? Mm-hmm. And I was like, oh my god, that's not what I asked for. And then a Vedator shows up. Like, I wasn't aware of what we actually had in fleet, which is a massive mistake whenever you do this kind of stuff, right? I was just fucking winging it wild. And I was just hoping, okay, surely this is gonna be fine, right? Like, I'm just gonna play it off. Like, we have full control. Our Ishtar fleet was tiny already, but, whatever. And then suddenly Sino goes up, right? A shit ton of dreads comes in. And it's like, I don't even know how many. I think 100 dreads or some shit. And we just couldn't kill them fast enough, right? We had a shit ton of stuff, but we lost the Vendetta, the Revenant, 2 Titans. One of them.
It's not really your fault. It's the people who jumped in, right?
I mean, no. I mean, the Vendetta is armor tanked, right? Like, I should have known. I should have also, like, it's always the FC's fault. That's my opinion, at least, right?
Yeah, I mean,
hey. It's like, if you blame anyone else
Good,
as an
good old
FC,
middle management opinion, right?
yeah, I mean, look at it, right? If I communicated properly and I have the force, I should have been aware that people might pick this up the wrong way when I say everything jump in, and then also I should have been aware they already mid it with those shield supers and times, right?
Yeah.
So
Okay.
I should have at least spotted that one and said, okay, no, guys, like, come on, I don't want any shield supers. But like, I just cared about like getting that fucking thing done. I mean, we ref the Asper, right? Just saying of success.
Oh, wait, was
But,
that?
yeah.
It wasn't even a kill. It was just a ref.
It was just the ref. It was just the armor time. I mean, I came back and finished that fucking thing. Trust me. But you know,
It's like I'll feed the same amount again.
And then an Aspel. How much is an Aspel? Is it like 4 or 5 bill or something? And we lost.
Yeah.
I think it was 350 bill total. Oh, peanuts, right?
Yeah, apparently.
So
I thought 100 bill was just like, I'm never gonna live this down, and I thought I lived it down, and then apparently it's not like anyone really taught. I mean, we mentioned occasionally where people, where FCs would be like, oh, I'm worried about losing my Caracal fleet, and I'd be like, look at this battle report and stop being so worried.
yeah.
But then Gobbins just decided to make it part of our like our staging, our ping for the next staging of how we're gonna get vengeance for Avaren spaghetti.
Right in the fields. Yeah. I mean, if my story doesn't make you feel better, I don't know, right? But I have to say, there was at the time when we just figured out how to hunt with Stukas, right? So we just figured it out, I think. And I made myself there, like I put that goal out there saying, okay, like we lost, I think it was 350 bill. But at the end of the day, like at the end of the month, we managed to come out as positive just from Stuka fleets that I ran. So I went on a fucking rampage. Like every day we fucking killed Rocals every day, right? That was like the I don't know, the glory times of like Stuka hunting, I'm telling you.
Like people walk up to you and go like, "Oh man, that was so great," and you're just staring into the distance with like images of the vendetta blowing up in your mind.
And you know what?
It's not over yet.
The Vendetta pilot actually gave me a lot of shit because he only got Nick's reimbursement, right? So like he's like, wait, I lost the Vendetta, but I'm getting only Nick's SRP. It's like, come on, dude. Like,
I mean, my answer to that was always, "You're getting SRP." Back in
my
day,
yes. Yeah,
we paid for all the ships twice.
That's true. But yeah, I mean, I think he got over it. But yeah, it was a tough. I wouldn't even say it was a tough time, but it was a tough loss. My biggest loss ever. What you gonna do?
Yeah, but now you, I don't know. I think losses are sometimes more important than wins.
They can be.
You know, it's like White Ross said, more GG, more skill, right? Like you, most of the time, I find you learn more from losing. You know, there are certainly times where you lose and don't learn anything, and you're just like, I did something really dumb that I already knew I shouldn't do, and then I did it, and I died for it. But a lot of the times, at least the closer the fight is, and especially when you lose a close fight, I think you can learn quite a bit.
Yeah, I mean, I think definitely losses teach you more, but then you know, I think they also can destroy NFC, right?
Yeah,
they can.
Although some people have like feed armor, where like I know FC's kind of all they do is lose, and like they just keep going for it, which is like, hey, honestly, probably better for your emotional health than someone who loses a bunch and quits the game, basically.
You know what? I think that has to do with the mindset they undock with, right? So if they undock, let's say someone undocks in Cormorants, right? You got this. What's his name? What's his name? Mist Amatin, I think, right? It's your like premier Corm FC. So he undocks.
Cormorants. If I start talking about Cormorants, we're going to be here for 4 hours.
But he undocks with almost the goal of losing those Cormorants, right? So he knows.
Yeah, I mean, he's basically he flies cormorants the way that most people do, but he's always looking for a way that he can kill them, but be decently as positive.
Yeah, so he only has eyes on like the ISK positive part, maybe, right? And I guess with cormorants, he probably most of the time he probably succeeds. I'm not sure. I didn't look at it.
And he even, the way he talks about it, even like it's not even just necessarily a perfectly, like if he thinks it'll be a fun way to die and go as negative, he'll do it, because he knows overall he's generally going to be as positive. And like I always have taken from my first corp, like kill boards don't matter, fun boards matter. As long as you're having fun, right?
Yeah, I think he at least stole the ISK war from me once, and it was the first time I fought him. I think because I camped him in, and I was in Munins, and then it was in our staging, so it was in IGE, and he was in system with like I don't even know how many corms, right? So in my head, I'm already like, it's just corms, right? But the problem was, I also told people, okay, I don't know how long we're gonna camp these guys in, but this is a war, so and this is our staging. Because if you have to leave, if you have to do stuff, it's totally fine. So over time, like another semi left, another Munin left, right? So I was left instead of like, I don't know, 100 people I had on the gate first, it was just like 60 left, right? Which is fine, but you have to be aware, So I was sitting pretty much on the gate, and he warped in and killed like I don't know, 2 semis maybe or so, right? And we killed all the corms, like I don't even know how many, like 70 corms, but he just barely got away with the score. It's like fuck this, fucking cormorants. But yeah, I mean that kind of stuff is great for like new FCs, right? Get their hands dirty.
Oh, you had to say it. Corms are not good for new FCs.
All right, why not?
Because, okay, so this
'Cause you
is my
cannot lose?
personal opinion of. So I think corms to me, I think, are probably about as hard to fly, or about as hard to FC properly, probably a bit harder than feroxes, but less than stuff that's harder, like less than, I don't know, even like
They're
I
easier
understand that
than
they're cheap,
feroxes.
but if you want to fly a T1 destroyer that is cheap, uh, has decent projection, and can punch up, like the Talwar, man, you got to go with the Talwar.
But the delayed DPS in the
Oh,
heck
come
metal.
on. It's like 2.5 seconds,
I mean,
honestly.
depends on the range. If you're at like 70 km, I don't know how fast they actually are. It can't be. It must be
They're
more than
light
2.5
missiles. It's
seconds.
not that, it doesn't take that long.
I don't know. I know the alpha is great. So if you hit mutant, if you had semis with them, they can ADC. So
Dude, the alpha is amazing.
that is true. Yeah,
And you can
I don't know.
perma
It's
MWD,
1.2, I
like
think.
I think one of the biggest things that new FCs need to learn how to do is to anchor and target call at the same time. I think a lot of people struggle with that. And the thing
I
about
struggle with
corms is
that.
you're not anchoring. I mean, you can, but you're doing it wrong if you're anchoring in corms. Like you're either aligning or you're sitting still. Whereas with
Yeah.
Talwars, you get that like hack signature bonus or signature reduction when your MWD is on and they're cap stable. And it's also a good because they do have some tank and they mitigate damage because of their signature sort of
Yeah, but like
buff. You can
any
actually
damage
have
kills them
T1 frigate.
anyway. Right?
Well, yeah, I mean, obviously, if you get shot by a bunch of Munins, it's not going to make a huge difference. But if you run into some random garbage with a cormorant, like if they start shooting you, you're going to die unless it's something pathetic. Whereas with the tower, you might tank long enough that if you have some people that are new players that are trying to get into Logi, and everyone says, well, you have to wait until you can fly a cruiser to do Logi, you can get frigate Logi with towers and they actually do something.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, probably.
I think people just don't like the way they look, honestly.
What? I think the Talbot looks definitely better than the
Yeah,
Cormorant.
it looks sick. I think people have like what's that
Kind of,
thing when you're afraid of bugs? You don't like bugs? Bugs gross you out?
yeah, I
Uh,
guess it's not
Bugophobia.
arachnophobia, but like whatever
Yeah,
phobia, right?
insectophobia. I don't know, there's
Yep.
probably a weird Latin name for it. I mean, that's just my thing. Anyway, I just like Talwars. I also think that putting 100 people into Blaster Atrons is a great idea. So who knows?
You know what? We did Blaster Tyrannus. No. I'm gonna go a step further when it comes to craziness. Blaster Remote Rep Tyrannus. No, was it Blaster Remote Shield Rep?
No.
Blaster Shield Remote Rep Tyrannus. And you know what? I gave that. So one of our FCs that just, he's not that new anymore, but like he came into Init and, started FC slowly for Init. He's a very experienced FC actually, but nobody knew him, right? So I gave him that challenge saying, okay, make this work, right? So I bought a bunch of those Tyrannus for fun and told him, like, here we go, like, make it work. And it wasn't his fault. There was a warp in issue with someone else who gave him the warp in and he landed off the fleet. I still believe they probably work to a degree, right? So I'm gonna give these Tyrannus also another shot, I think. Maybe against you guys.
RR has always, I don't know, remote rep.
I always love it.
I'm always so worried in Horde doing remote rep that my fleet is just gonna shoot each other and all die to each other by accidentally using their weapons instead of the remote reps on each other.
Hey, just a couple of days ago, I tested remote rep Gilas. I mean, on a large scale. So we've been flying these for a long time, actually. Not for super long, but for a while. On a corp level, right? So 20, 25, 30 people. We have tried it on a larger scale with like Vexors and stuff like this. And now, like, I tested these on like a big scale. But I mean, the fight was, kind of lopsided because, we were outnumbered and they had caps. So it wasn't the optimal fight to test them on.
Suboptimal.
Yeah, I mean, we were outnumbered 2-1 and they had like 30 carriers, right? But I still, and I think I overestimated us there. Also, organizational wise, there was a couple issues. But I still think they can out-trade hack fleets. They can do it. I know, for example, yeah. I mean, so the thing is, right? I'm also doing another thing that's bush Gilas, right? So you have like 25, like a wing of 25, and you can kill hacks fairly fast with those, right? You would go for semis first, obviously. You can kill them fast. Like we picked out like hacks out of 100, 200 man blobs easily before, right? Even several ones, right? But obviously your time on grid if you're alone is limited. Like if they're busy, you can just keep murdering shit. So the idea was, like, if you now scale it up and you have like more Gilas, like let's say you have 100, 200 Gilas, and you don't need those numbers in semis and stuff like this, you have a lot of DPS. So your trade speed, like your kill speed, is so high that they almost can't kill you fast enough, right? So
you're still using a trigger though, right?
Yeah. So you split that up. It's a little.
So I mean, that's a little. I would be less worried with that but like if you put ships, like if we had 50 random people selected from Horde to be in a remote rep Tyrannus, I think probably a third of them would be killed by friendly fire. They're like walking onto someone, and then they're like, trying to shoot this guy, and then they shoot their guns onto the good guy and the rep on the bad guy.
Well, I mean, so the thing with the Tyrannus is also, you wouldn't necessarily look for that straight up fight, 100 versus 100. It's not necessarily what you're coming for, right? You're in Scepters, so I would expect that hostels are a little bit more confident to take on some Scepters with, like, let's say 50 guys and mutants or something, right? So obviously you would try to get on grid with them and create opportunities in some way, right? Get them stretched out, whatever, right? Like make them warp a little bit, and you're faster when it comes to warping. I mean, there's several techniques or like ways to, create opportunities. And then you would pounce on like small groups. Let's say like you catch one or two here, you catch some here. And then if they warp in on zero on you and they want to brawl, yeah, well, then, you just overheat your fucking guns and try your best. I think that's probably the way to go with those, right? Straight up warping into the same sized mutant fleet, I know that's not the way to go, really, right?
But are you considering the fun, like your enemies having fun too?
Yeah, I guess with that doctrine, everyone's gonna have fun. I mean, you get to kill a shit ton of stuff.
They'll have fun once they catch you.
Yeah, exactly. And you know what? That's the kind of stuff that's good for new FCs. That's why I gave that to La Loca, right? And told him like, hey, like people are gonna have fun. Like there's no way around this. Like you can't, like how do you undock with Blaster Tyrannuses and not have fun, right? It's fucking hard. You'd have to try to not have fun. Because, I mean, first of all, it's a new concept people haven't flown before, and that's what I always say. Like new FCs, like come up with your own shit, right? Like don't do the corn thing, maybe, right? Unless you really have an idea of how they work, do something else, do something weird. You will already get people interested then, right? They're like, oh shit, that's something new. And then you get some more people. And then also, if you try new shit, like me with the Gilas, trying that on a large scale, most FCs will say that's crazy, right? Because how are you gonna like remote rep Gilas on a large scale, right? That's fucking crazy. But at the same time, if you lose these, and we did, right? We lost a bunch of them. I think we lost like around 17 build total, and we killed only 9. So we were outnumbered, obviously, right? But whatever. Still, we lost a bunch of them. But people are not mad about it then. You know, they're like, all right, we're the pioneers here, right? We're testing this. And it's less of a blow then, you know, for people's morale and all that stuff. You don't have to worry all that much, right? If you try new things, it's already a bonus point.
Well, for the FC too, because you haven't. It's not like you've seen that doctrine flown very successfully 100 times, and then you try it and it's like a miserable failure.
But you know what? If you try something new and it works really good, god damn,
then
that
CCP
feeling.
will nerf it.
That too, maybe. But I tell you that's the best, right? That's definitely the best feeling. I feel like that you can have as an FC and Eve. Like if you make something
Plus, you
work,
get to name the doctrine, right?
That too. I mean, when we're talking about Stukas, Pro God Legend would probably get triggered and say, you know, disagree. But you know, that's all right. But yeah, what were we talking about earlier when I stopped you actually and said we should talk about it on stream? What was that again? I have to actually look it up.
Oh, the ego.
Yeah, exactly. So you said an FC's ego is what is.
I said the ego is the enemy of the Apex FC.
So, and I say, I'm not sure about that. So you, like, from your point of view, explain why you say that.
Well, I think, and the qualifier was, it depends on where your motivation comes from. But I think that in terms of your skill as an FC, having ego can only cause you to ignore ways that you need to improve. I mean, it could just be a difference in definition, but to me, you know, ego is essentially you're creating self-value through your identity and not through merit. And yeah, I mean, I always like the number one advice I give to new FCs is don't ever get comfortable thinking that you're good or that you're good enough, because I mean, I think to be good, you always have to be trying to get better.
All right. So, I mean,
there are people that, you know, I'm sure undock because they like being in charge and they like hearing the sound of their own voice. They like other people hearing their voice.
Yeah, and so when I said I'm not sure about that, I'm not saying egos are necessarily a good thing, but my argument would be that egos can work in a positive way too. Like if you have a big ego, you might you might be overconfident, or you might just have that extra confidence that you need to make certain moves, right? To make that bold move on stuff, and it might just fail, right? It might just fail. But at the same time,
yeah,
that can also open the door for like some epic shit, right? If you have a massive ego and you jump in, it's like, I say ego, that it's always attached with like negativity. But if you say like confidence, right? If
I
you're
think there's a
really
difference
confident,
between confidence and like pride
there
or
is.
self-importance.
There is, but I mean, if you have a massive ego, you gotta be confident, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it comes like one comes with the other to a degree at least. So I would say, you know, certain things, you almost need a certain level of ego to do this, right? If you have a zero ego, then, you know, there's also very little confidence there, I guess, right? So there's always a little bit, like you need it to a degree, right? If it goes too far, all right. I get it. Yeah, but
I've
you know,
just seen so many people that ran like a bunch of garbage fleets where they didn't really do that well, but not everyone, but a lot of people didn't know the game well enough to realize that they were bad and feeding, and then they just got it in their head that like, oh, I'm an FC. Look at me. I'm just
yeah.
like,
Well,
dude,
technically,
I,
they are. Right?
yeah, I don't know. I guess, and sometimes I feel like because I've always enjoyed sort of teaching people. So sometimes I've definitely had situations where I was a mentor to someone, and they got like okay, and then decided they didn't need to learn anything anymore. And I don't know. I get a little butt mad
That's
about that.
Yeah, that's probably the most harmful thing that an ego can do to NFC is they're not self-critical, right? So
Hmm.
after a fleet, let's say I've seen it before, right? So I'm gonna give you an example. Not gonna name any names. And thanks for the whole Scottish Dex. So in its case, we have like a little bit of a logbook going on. So FCs log their fleets, so we know like who's active, who's not active, and we can base it on numbers, right? For promotion and all that stuff. So we need to know basically like who's actually doing fleets. I'm not gonna keep track of everything, right? So everyone is expected to write it down and stuff. And then most people write it down with like a couple stats, right? Let's say we did this and this. We went into system A. We killed a carrier, which is like the exact example, and then we went home. Then they leave out the part where they jump the gate and get completely murdered the system next door, right? Then they killed a carrier and maybe some ships worth 3 bill, and on the other side they lose 6 bill. But that part doesn't show up, and they don't feel the need of analyzing, oh, what did I fucking do wrong here? And that stuff, that's an ego thing, right? And then they don't like talking about that part, and that's, I think, the most harmful thing.
It's strange because it's like if you want to win and you know that some of the FCs that you're facing are self-critical, you're just like letting them have an advantage if you're not doing it yourself. It's very strange to me.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know, maybe I'm a weird case, but I enjoy analyzing my fuck ups. I really do.
Hmm.
And people always get it wrong when they're in my fleet and we're on the way home and we have like 10 jumps. I start talking about the fight and like what we could have done, and everyone's like, "Oh, don't be so hard on yourself" and stuff like this,
Hmm.
which is always weird. I'm like, dudes, come on, like,
Yeah, I know.
like
I
I
know that
might sound
exact
like,
thing.
yeah, I might sound like I'm mad or anything, but actually, I just enjoy the process of going through this, and weirdly enough, those fuck ups then give me confidence that next time, well, I'm obviously not gonna do these fuck ups, hopefully, right?
Hmm.
And so there is a chance of winning, and then I learned something, right? So I get confidence from that, from mistakes, which is weird, right? It's maybe the opposite of like, it always depends on the mindset, I guess, right?
Yeah, it's a thing in Eve that has always I can't quite figure it out how it can appeal to so many different kinds of people. It's like basically almost every kind of person can Eve might get them. Uh, don't know why.
Well, I think, I mean, but there's a certain type of people also that you see over and over, right? There's a certain like, I bet if you pick like 10 random gamers, I can pick the Eve guy. I bet I could.
I don't know, dude. There's a lot of people that are not your spreadsheet types. They're not your. I. I mean, I guess just like if someone is a big enough space nerd, they might just play Eve regardless of any other because there's so much to do, and there's also a lot of stuff in Eve that is. I was talking to someone about this the other day. There's a lot of stuff in Eve that being good at you can't be good at it. You just do it, and you have a lot of SP, or you don't, or you have like a lot of infrastructure, or you don't. And then even there are things that you can be good or bad at, but to the layman, it's just not parsable. like someone watching you who doesn't know Eve, and even someone who does know Eve but doesn't know that particular part of it, can't tell that your little thing you have set up on a wormhole is like really stupid and badly designed or like poorly managed or whatever. Um, so I think a lot of people they just love the space stuff, and the rest of it is just like, well, find a thing that keeps them satisfied and feeling okay, and then just live out the space dream.
Yeah, that's interesting actually. Yeah, maybe.
I mean, like if you're bad at Counter-Strike, anyone with a set of eyes can be like, "Oh, you died immediately and didn't do anything."
That is true. That's
But
why
if you're bad at Eve, it's like some random person. You're like, "Oh, look at all these pretty lights." Like
that's
I've seen people get suicide ganked and then explain that as a fight, like a space fight that happened to people that don't play Eve.
well, if it's exciting to them, you know.
Yeah. Hey, it works.
But you know what? That's one of the sad things. Like that's um why Eve is always so hard to stream, is because people that don't know Eve, they don't know if someone is winning, if someone's doing well, or all that stuff. In CS or whatever, like anyone can see, okay, this guy's doing like headshots like 24/7 here, like that dude is fucking good, right? So it's very easy to spot skill in CS and all that stuff. Even though, you know, CS, like that was like before my Eve time, that was my passion really. So there's more to that than aim, obviously, right? Um, but I think that's so sad that, you know, you can't really, to someone who doesn't know Eve, you can't really show them, okay, what we're doing right here, this is awesome, or like maybe it's not awesome.
Yeah, even
It's
my
very hard for
streams,
them.
I think, only really served to explain things to people that already played Eve that hadn't necessarily participated or understood certain things. I'm not even sure any of the streams that I did explaining things would actually make any sense to someone who had actually never played Eve.
Yeah, it's probably most of the, especially like this stream, like the shit we're talking about. Like most people even playing Eve probably like have questions like here and there and stuff. But yeah, I can't
Yeah, I mean,
explain
I've been
everything,
playing Eve
right?
for over 10 years, and there are still plenty of parts of the game I have no knowledge about. People will
Which
ask
is
me a question, and I'm like, I literally don't know.
which is great about it, right?
Hmm.
Which is one of the great things. All right, guys, if you have questions, put them in chat, right? We're approaching 1.5 hours, so if you have any questions, and I think Convict actually, CCP Convict, one of my favorite devs in the game, who also used to be an init actually, when I came back, by the way, had a question. Let me read this. I kind of think if you're an FC for a block and you're trash, you should have been filtered out before you get to summon caps or do strat ops? Question mark.
That would be nice, wouldn't it?
Did he just call you trash?
I
No,
don't
I'm just kidding. I'm just
think
kidding.
so. Yeah, I mean, ideally, right? In an ideal world, everyone. The problem is, this is a problem with the human condition. Is that, um, A is higher B's, B is higher C's, C's higher D's, and so on. So you don't always get people who are actually good at what they're doing to be given the opportunity to do those things. So
You know what? That's one of the struggles we had not too long ago, maybe a year ago or something. We reworked our FC structure. Like, so when do you get promoted? When do you do, like, when do you get the chance to form caps? How many caps? Like, do you, like, can you just summon endless amounts of caps? You know, at what level can you do that? When it's super time, like, you know, that kind of stuff. So we wrote down all kinds of rules and split the FC team up into, I think, 5 groups: recruit, roaming, skirmish, tactical, and strategic. Right, so 5 groups of FCs, and then it's all split up. Like strategic, they can field everything. Then tactical, they have access to all kinds of dreads, whatever they want, but no supers. Then you have like skirmish, who can field all kinds of subs, but only a limited amount of caps, like a couple triage, maybe 2-3 dreads for some stuff, or let's say call for it, right? If someone wants to field his own thing just with the corp or whatever, they can always do whatever they want, right? But you know, so, and then how do you actually promote people, right? That's the hardest part about it. Like what we
And
wanted to
when
do.
somebody decides, or you have, even if you make criteria, someone makes the criteria, right?
I mean, yes. So what we wanted to do and what we actually at the end got was pretty much different, to be honest, right? What we wanted to do was have it all fact based. So the So the idea was you have to have a certain amount of fleets. You have to have proven certain things, right? Did you win some fights, right? A proper fight. How do you define a proper fight? Right? That's another problem. So then, like, a certain fleet of a certain size, and I think the size of a fleet that speaks the most, to be quite honest. Because if you field a lot of fleets and you get a lot of people, you're doing something right.
Yeah, that's true.
If you do a lot of fleets and nobody wants to join, then guess what? Yeah, you have to work on some stuff, whatever it is. But what we got in the end was a little different because it turns out like running those stats and all that stuff, it's just a little bit too much, and it's just too complicated of a system at the end. And then we went back to the old system of okay, let's just have the FC group that's on the next level, talk about it. Okay, who do we promote? And then it's again, then favoritism comes into play. Maybe in this, I think in our case, not too much, but it can
if you have
happen.
enough voices, if you make sure that you have diverse voices in the decision making process, and it's, I mean, look, you're not writing tax code. It is a video game, so like, and you are going to have to work with these people, so I mean, it makes sense. I think that something like that can be poisoned if the wrong people get into power and then perpetuate a system that sucks. But if that happens, I mean, they're going to kill their own alliance eventually anyway. So
yeah. Let me see. Do we have more questions here? Was the clueless guy? Wait a second. Talking about kickies, yeah, and I have to read this. We don't know what they're doing, but are full of themselves that don't get to lead anything but kicky fleets. Oh yeah. TCP with the sick burns here. I think at least. I'm not sure if that was aimed at me. I take it personally. Let's see, any questions? I'm just looking for question marks. Sorry if I'm skipping over your stuff. You have to put the question up again, I guess. Never forgetty, question mark? Never forgetty. Apparently, right?
never forgetty the spaghetti.
Alright. Doesn't look like I missed any questions. Alrighty. So we had 1.5 hours anyway.
I have a question. It's going to be a meme.
Alright.
Dex,
bring it. Bring the meme. I'm ready. But let's do Dex question. And while he does that, I want to already say,
now we're all watching him. He's got to be really funny.
It better be good, Dex. I mean, it better be. But I can already say thanks for coming on. Much appreciated.
Yeah, anytime.
It was nice talking to you, and welcome back.
I had some butt cheek clenching last night, warping out of those bombs. That was
I wasn't there.
It was, yeah. There were several warps where it was warping Ferox's, the tick on which the first bomb exploded and killed Bubbles, and if not, the rest of the bombs would kill the rest of the Feroxes. So
yeah,
tie-dye kind of helps there, kind of. Also, sometimes like 15 bombs can go off at the same time and all do damage, which is like okay.
Yeah, there's some fuckery happening in tie-dye, right? It's especially, what also happens with like bushes. That's why I dislike tie-dye the most.
Oh, Dex actually had a really good question.
Why do we allow Germans to be in charge of things? I don't know. Don't ask me. But yeah.
Well, it's been a blast. I'm gonna go have some dinner and maybe play some Eve online.
Oh, yo. All right, then maybe we can see each other on the battlefield.
See if love can bloom on the battlefield, right?
Say that again, what?
See if love can bloom on the battlefield.
Yeah. Alrighty, guys. thanks for hanging out. Thanks for the subs and all that stuff. Much appreciated. And see you guys. I'm not sure if I can stream in the middle of the week. You know, there's not all that much I can do at the moment, but I'm always trying to keep up the FC chat data at least, right? So at the very least, see you on next Friday. Alrighty. And see you guys around.
Like small gang, or are they like hitting space out there?